Haran and Malhaler in memory of her father, Yosef Elazar ben Tzvi Hirsch. B. Pizer in memory of her father, Yisachar Dov ben Shmuel. Stanley Presser in memory of his wife, Chayaleah bas Zeba Cohen. By grandchildren, a contribution was made in honor of Vicky and Larry Fish by children and grandchildren. A week of learning, Judy and Michael Peretsky in memory of her mother. What's today's date?
25th.
Today is, we have one. Day of Learning by Jackie Fruchtman in memory of her husband, Yaakov ben Simcha Olav Hashalom. Again, we gratefully acknowledge the generosity of the various donors.
Mr. Kipperman, nice to see you.
Okay. If I am not incorrect, we left off at the bottom of Ayin Ches Amid Beis. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were talking about the 3-year famine, and David suspected that it was because of Avodah Zarah, but nobody was doing Avodah Zarah. And he was suspecting it was because of Znus, nobody was doing Znus. So he went and talked to the Rabbanu Shalom about it, and the Rabbanu Shalom said, you didn't show enough respect for Shaul when he had his Levaya. And he went and talked to the Tumim, and now we are near the bottom of the page. That the Yomer Hashem El Shaol V'Albeis Hadamim. This we said this yesterday. It's because the famine is because of Shaul and his bloody house. Asher Hemis HaGevonim, that he killed off the Gevonim. Al Shaul, about Shaul, that he didn't get a proper funeral celebrations. Shalom Nespid Halacha, they didn't properly eulogize him. That was the sin of the people. The Albeis Adamim, because of his bloody house. Sher Hamis Es HaGevonim, he killed the Gevonim. So the Gemara says, Ki heichin matzinu v'Shaul hamesis hagavainim. Can you really say Shaul killed the Gavainim? There's no pasuk anywhere that says that. So Ella mitoch shahareg nov ir hakahanim. Shaul killed all the Kahanim in the city were only Kahanim. It's interesting how they had blaming there. It would be a Kohen, a woman, a Kohen, a woman. That's how they would do it. In any event, Shahu must speak on Lahem Mayim of Mazain, because the Kohanim in Noid provided food and water for the Gevonim. So indirectly, it's as if Shaul cut off their sustenance by killing the Kohanim there. So Gemara says this is interesting. It criticizes, and God criticizes and wants to punish the Jews because they didn't show respect for Shaul. And at the same time, it punishes the Jews because Shaul killed the Gevonim. That seems to be a stira. So the Gemara says, yes, it could be both. The Omer Resh Lakesh asks the question, Mike, Siv, what is the meaning of the pasuk? Bakshu es Hashem kol anone haaretz asher mishpatu pa'olo. The literal meaning of the pasuk is, look for God, you humble people who live on the land, you amei haaretz, who fulfill the law. But they darshan it ka'asher mishpato, a place where there is mishpat, meaning when someone dies, Sham Pa'olo, at the same time that when a person dies and he's judged, nonetheless, it's the obligation of the mourners and the people attending the funeral to state his good deeds. So this halacha is actually a requirement in halacha that you praise people as best you can at the levaya, and you do hespedim. Okay. So the Omer David, with regard to David, Shaul, when it Navshalahu, he's and now we're on the top of the next page. Tarser Yarche Shasa. It's already more than 12 months since Shaul was dead and buried. So it's too late to do new hespedim for him. Lo darche lamaspide nesis. It's too late to do hespedim for him. However, when it comes to the nesinim, we can do a tikkun. Nesinim nekrenahu v'nafsa v'paisinahu. Let me gather up the nesinim and try to appease them. Okay, so miyad, right away, Yikra Melech Ligavainim V'Yamar Aleim. David gathered all the Gibeonites. These are the Nesinim. They were not called Nesinim yet. We'll see in a second. Ma e'eselachem uma achaper. What can I do for you? And how can I atone for the sin of Shaul of depriving you of Mazon and Mayim? Hashem, and how can we get you to be so sufficiently appeased that you'll bless the rest of the Jewish community? And the next pasuk says, "V'amru lo ha'gevainim el ein lanu kesef v'zahav im sha'ol v'im beso." There's not enough money in Shaul's vault, and there aren't enough possessions in his estate to satisfy our needs. V'ein lanu ish, and we do not want to kill anybody from the general Jewish community in retribution. Yutain lanu shiva anashim mebanav v'hu kanum lashem. Rather, what we want you to do is take 7 male descendants of Shaul, sons or grandsons, Anashim and of Vahokan Lashem, and we will hang them, we will execute them for God's name. Mipayes velo mipaisayu. So David still tried I don't want to kill them. What else could we do? And they went back and forth, and there was nothing that would appease them. So David says, Al shaloisha simonim yesh ba'umazu. There are 3 characteristics that are representative of the best of the Jewish people. Harachamim v'habaishanin v'gemulei chasadim. They are merciful to others. They are modest in their behavior. V'gemulei chasadim, and they do good acts of kindness for other people. Rachamim diksiv, the pasuk says, and then we prove each one up from a pasuk. V'naisein lecha rachamim v'rachmecha hirbecha. God, your God will give you mercy, and He will teach you to be merciful, and based on that, you'll multiply. By shanim diksiv, that they are modest people. Ba'avur tihei yiraso al peneihem. You can look at a Jew, you see an altar from a Yid, and you say, he's got a hadras on him. You can look at a Jew and see the modesty and the fear of God in his face. Gemule Chasadim Dixiv, and the righteous acts of kindness is written Lamana Asher Yetzave Esbanav Yes Beit Visa, etc. Abraham told his children and everybody in his household, Kol Sheyesh Bo, that they should be kind to other people and to do charitable things. So Abraham brought the Arabs in to feed them, etc., etc. Okay. Kol sheyesh bo shlosha simanim halalu. When somebody comes to convert and you check him out and he has these three character traits, then Roy lehi dovek umazu. Such a person is appropriate to cling to the Jewish people. In other words, somebody is a good guy. You want to bring him into the Jewish people, which these Gevonim obviously did not demonstrate here. But nonetheless, since they had already converted by the time of Yehoshua, there was nothing you could really do about it. And David did agree to do what was necessary to appease them. So V'yikach HaMelech es shnei b'nei Ritzpah. So David took two of the sons of the woman Ritzpah, Bes Ayah, the daughter of Ayah, Asher Yolda LeShaul. She was one of Shaul's wives, and she bore these two sons for him. Vs Armoni, Vs Mephibosheth, Vs Chamishas b'nei Michal bas Shaul, Asher Yolda la'ad Riel. And he also ben Barzillai Micholosil. So he also took 5 other people, the sons of Michal, these were Shaul's grandchildren. And he turned these people over, the pasuk says, to the Giboni, and they hung them. Okay, my Hani. So Shaul had many other descendants, but why these particular 7 got this selectia? So Omar Rav Huna, Virum lifnei Aaron, he passed them before the Aaron, and Kol Sha'aron Kol Tol Lemisa. If the Aaron sort of supernaturally prevented them, in other words, everybody's walking past the Aaron, and the ones that the Aaron didn't allow to keep walking, if there was a stop in the line, those are the ones that were turned over to the Gevonim. Kol she'ein Aaron kolato l'chaim. Anyone that was able to keep on walking, the Aaron, they remained alive. So Reuven asked yesterday when we were learning this, why didn't he use the Urim V'Tumim? So if you recall, we learned like 2 weeks ago, that the Urim and V'Tumim only work for good for Jewish people, but not for bad. So he couldn't use the Urim V'Tumim to send people to their death. Okay. So Mesiv Rav Chana Bar Katina, he challenges this. And we had just said that Mephibosheth was in part of this group. But the pasuk goes on to say, Vayachmoel Hamelech al Mephibosheth ben Yonasan ben Shaul. But David had mercy on Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son. So if David made the choice to cut Mephibosheth out of the line, how can we say that the Aaron did the picking? Here, David picked someone not to die. Shelo Yahaviru. So the one possibility is David took him out of line. So the Aaron didn't have a chance to pick him to go to the selectia. Ke mashus panim yesh b'davar. Is that would David do such a thing to show this blatant favoritism? Ella shehaviru v'koltu. the Aaron did indeed stop. He went online, and the Aaron did indeed stop him. Ubike shalav rachamim. So David prayed to God, cut Mephibosheth some slack. Upilotai, and the Aaron let him keep walking. So there was a delay, but he wasn't selected. The akate masui ponim yesh bedavar. Could really David show such favoritism that everybody sees the line stop and Mephibosheth gets released and allowed to go on? Ella shabikech rachamim shalo kalten ora. David prayed before Mephibosheth reached the Aaron that the Aaron shouldn't delay him or hold him back. Okay, so now we have David praying privately, Mephibosheth's in line like everybody else and not detained, so he left. V'hoksiv lo yamusu avos albanim. But just a minute, the Gibeonim were taking the sons and grandsons of Shaul and putting them to death for his sins to them. Don't we have a rule that you can't do that? Omer Rav Chia Barava, Omer Rav Yochanan, he says, Mutav she te'aker ois achas min Torah v'al yischalel shem shemayim b'fahesia. Okay, literally, literally it means it's better to erase a letter from the Torah than allow God's name to be defamed publicly. What we're saying here is that this is a gezeres sha'ah, a one-time deal, and they ignored one of the rules of the Torah in order that there should not be this defamation of God's name, because Shaul should not have done that. Pasuk goes on. The tikach ritzpa bes aya, a woman named Ritzpah, the daughter of Aya, es hasak. She took sackcloth, that's like burlap, the tatehu lo al hatzur, and she used it to cover a rock. Mischalas kotzir ad nitan mayim aleihim, because this was the rainy season. And it was starting to rain, min hashamayim, from heaven. V'lo nasata oif hashamayim lanuach aleihem, and she covered these bodies of these 7 people with sack so that the birds wouldn't pick on them in the daytime, yomim. The eschayas hasoy and the animals, the wild animals, would not nibble on these bodies at night. So the problem with that is that the halacha is you have to bury an executed person immediately. You can't leave him hanging there. V'haksiv lo tolin nivlaso ad ha'et. You can't leave the guy hanging who's executed. Omer Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadok. Mutav shikar ois achas min Torah v'yiskadei shem shemayim b'farhesia. Again, it's a gezeres sha'ah that you could leave them hanging. You violate one rule in the Torah in order to sanctify God's name. Shehu oivrim v'shaviv oimrim ma tivon shel elu. People will see these guys swinging in the breeze and they'll say, what did they do wrong that they were hung? Halalu b'nei malachim heim. These guys are princes. Oma asu, what could they have possibly done? Pashtu yedeihem begarim gerurim. And the answer would be their grandfather. It says they, but it means their father and grandfather mistreated converts who had a flaw. They were not allowed to marry into the Kehillah. V'amru ein lecha uma sharuya lahadabek ba kazu. And the people would then say, even non-Jews walking by, there's nobody as great as the Jewish people who punish with death people who mistreat even not such kosher converts. Okay? B'nei hedyotos alachas kama v'kama. If they okay, b'nei malachim kach. If they do this to princes, b'nei hedyotos alachas kama v'kama. How much more so? The regular Jewish people have to be careful to be considerate and kind and loving towards even Suffolk converts. Omar Gerim Gerurim Kach, if they treat these not such good converts this way. Yisrael al Achas Kama Bakama. What about a regular convert, a normal convert who's fully becomes a Yisrael? How much more so the Jewish people have to be considerate. So based on, we said before that they broke the rules to avoid Chilul Hashem and to accomplish Kiddush Hashem. And the Gemara now says it worked. Miyad nistaifu al Yisrael me'ah v'chamishim elef, 150,000 converts immediately joined the Jewish people. Shenemar, as it says, V'yushloim shivim elef nasei savol v'shmeina elef chotzaev bahar. These are the Nesinim, and here's how they got their name, the Nesinim. That said, Shlomo rather had 70,000 schleppers and 80,000 schleppers, meaning water carriers. They would deliver water, and 80,000 wood choppers on the mountain. V'dilmi Israel hayu. So who says these were the Nesinim? Maybe they were. In other words, why are you using this pasuk to say there were 150,000 converts? Maybe Shaul just hired a lot. These were all Jews, born Jews, that Shaul drafted to do these rather demeaning chores. Lo salkadoitach, don't even think that. Dixiv. Ubnei Yisrael nasan Shlomo Eved. Shlomo didn't draft anybody to be a servant. Dilma Dogazer Be'alma. So maybe they were just minimum wage earners. They were just people hired to do this job. Ela mehacha, and so that question still stands. Ella mehacha. So we had another pasuk that says, "V'yasaper Shlomo kol anashim hagerim asher be'eretz Yisrael." Shlomo took a census of all the converts in Israel. V'yamatzah me'ah v'chamishim elef, and it turned out that there were 150,000. V'yasmehem shivim elech neisei sovel, and he made 70,000 of them water carriers, which is what the word nesinim means. Ushmeinim elef chaytzei bahar, and he got 80,000 of them to go climb the mountain and chop wood. Okay. So, if you recall yesterday, I made mention of the fact that there was a problem that the Gemara says David made this takana, and yet it was written in the Torah that you couldn't marry the Hamon Am, that you couldn't marry suspect converts. They have to intermarry or marry mamzerim or whatever. Okay, so the Gemara asked that question now. Unisinim David Gazer Aleihem, Moshe Gazer Aleihem. How can you tell me that David made this rule? The Moshe made this rule. It was in the Torah itself. The Ksiv, it says in a pasuk, Mechotev etzecha ad shoyev meimecha. The pasuk says, from the people who chop wood to the drawers of the water. Now, the literal meaning of the pasuk is from the scholars to the schleppers, but they're learning these words to mean that there were marital restrictions on these people. So Meiser Geyser Lahahu Doro. Moshe told the Jews when they were starting in their trip through the desert, don't marry into the Hamonam. But that was a one-time deal. David goes there, L'chulei Dora. David's Gezerah was permanent. But just a minute, we're still missing the historical context. Yehoshua accepted them, but he said they can't intermarry. So what did David do? It said, okay, Moshe was one-time deal, but Yehoshua had already made a gezerah. Akati Yehoshua geyser alayhu, but Yeshua already made the gezerah. Tiksiv v'yitname Yehoshua b'yom hahu chotvei eitzim v'shoel v'mayim le'eda ulam mizbach, etc. That God, Yehoshua told the Nesinim, all right, you can be Jews, but you're wood choppers and water schleppers, and you work for the Aron Hashem. You have a specific chores that you will do for the at that time the tabernacle and later on for the temples. Yehoshua Geyser Bisman Shebeis HaMikdash Kayim. Yehoshua's gezerah was you'll have to draw water and cut wood, and you'll be involved in the menial tasks for the temple. Bimei, but Bisman, that's Biman Shebeis HaMikdash Kayim. David goes there, Bisman She'ein Beis HaMikdash Kayim. David made it a permanent rule for all time. Okay, the May Rebbe, now, the temple has been destroyed. The second temple has been destroyed. Tough times for the Jews. The Nesinim, even though they may have been flawed earlier in history, they seem to be devoted Jews now. And Bimei Rebbe, at the time of Rebbeinu, the Rebbe who assembled the Mishnayos, Bakshu Lahatir Nesinim, they wanted to allow the Nesinim to marry anybody they wanted to. Amr Lahem Rebbe Chelkeinu Natir Chelek Mizbeach Mihetir. You can our involvement with the Nesinim, that they're the garbage collectors and the water deliverers and the wood choppers, we can let them off the hook. But what power do we have to let their relationship to the Mizbeach, to the temple, off the hook? That's God's department. Upliga the Rebbe Chia Barava, and Rebbe contradicted the opinion of Reb Chia Barava, the Omer Reb Chia Barava, Omer Reb Yochanan, Chelek Eda Li'aylamasir, the other way around. There is still a Jewish people, and the Nesinim still have issues. So that intermarrying with us, you can't release them from. However, Chelek Mizbeach, when it comes to the altar, Bisman Shebeis HaMikdash Kayim Aser, Ein Beis HaMikdash Kayim Shari. Once the Beis HaMikdash is no longer in existence, then they're permissible. And if you're interested in this, there is a very, very long footnote 5. Next Mishnah. Amar Reb Yeshua. Shemati, I heard, Shahasoris Chayletz V'cholzin le'ishtay. Okay. If there are siblings, one of whom is a sris, that means someone who is infertile, is incapable of bearing children, I learned that if the sris is the surviving sibling, he can do chalitza with his brother's widow. And if he is the one who dies, his brother does chalitza with his widow. Vahasoris lo chayletz velo cholzin liishto. They also said in the same shir the exact opposite. A sris does not do chalitza with a survivor, with his dead brother's widow, and if he's dead, they do not do chalitza with his wife. So in the same shir, they said two halachas that are the exact opposite of each other. Ve'en li lefarish. I have absolutely no idea what they were talking about. I don't know how I sat through the whole shir. I took careful notes, and I really don't understand this contradiction. Omi Rabbi Akiva ani efarish. Rabbi Akiva says, "Don't worry, I'll explain it to you." Shris Adam Chayletz V'Choltzin Li'ishto. If the person was at one time able to procreate, but he was in a car crash, Nebuch, whatever happened to him, his testicles are crushed, or his penis is severed, after he was already married and already able to have children, then you do chalitza if it's him, or your chayletz his wife if she's the widow. Okay. But mipnei shahoisa lo shasa kosher, because there was a time when he was perfectly capable of procreation. Sris chama, literally a son-caused sris, but this means someone who's never able to father children. He was infertile from birth. Lo chayletz v'lo chalitza leishto. He cannot do chalitza or yibam, and we do not submit his wife to the process. Okay. Now, why? Mipnei shelo hoisa lo shasa kosher, because they never were kosher, able to have children. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer, he says, Loki, I don't agree. Ella, sris chama chayletz v'choltzin liishto. It's the other way around. The person who was never fertile, you do chalitza one way or the other. Mipnei sheyesh lo refuah. Because our medical knowledge is such that there is the possibility of doing surgery and making him able to, in other words, you clear out the blockage in the vas deferens, and he might be able to father children. Sris Adam lo cheletz v'lo cholzin leishto, but the guy whose penis is cut off or whose balls are crushed does not. Because we don't have the medical technology to sew it back on, basically. Okay? Hey, Id Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira al ben Genusas. Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira testified about this fellow Ben Megusas, Yerushalayim, at a Bezdin in Yerushalayim, Sri Sodom. He was a Sris Adam. He had an accident or something at some point where his genitalia were damaged. The Yamos Ishto, and they did Yibum on this guy's wife. He died, obviously. The Kayam Divrei Rev Akiva, and that they allowed his surviving brother to be miyavim with the widow is proof to Rebbe Akiva's position. Okay, now we're going back. We're going to explain. Sris lo chayletz v'lo miyavim asoris. The surviving brother is a soris. He does not do chalitza or yibam. V'chein ailonis lo choletzes v'lo yisviavemes. Similarly, if the widow is incapable, now, not an old lady who passed their menopause, they do. But here we're talking about a young woman who is infertile. She's an ailonis. In halachic terms, she never had enough estrogen for her simonim to develop as she grew up. Okay, so in any event, where was I? She does not have chalitza or yibam performed on her. Hasris shechoylets yivamtoi lo pasla. If the sris the eved does chalitza with this yavama, it doesn't count at all, to the extent that the widow could then marry a Kohen. Now, remember, we learned earlier that chalitza is similar in some ways to divorce, that it puzzles her to a Kohen. But so the commissioner here is going out on a limb and saying, even if a shris does chalitza with her, she's just a widow and could marry a Kohen. Okay, bala psala. But if he actually has sex with her, that we can't go that far, and she's now not able to marry a Kohen if he divorces her. Mipnei shehi bilas nus, because by having bia with anybody that's not 100% kosher, the label Zoina is put on her, and as we explained, that's not always pejorative. Here, it's just a disqualifier. Okay, v'chein ailonis shecholtzu lo achin, and similarly, if one of the brothers does chalitza with an ailonis who's a widow, lo pasluha, that would not prohibit her from marrying a Kohen. Now, he would have to have had children by another wife, but he could marry her. Baluha pasluha, but sex would be a deal breaker. Okay? Mipnei shahabilosa bilasnus. Similarly, the same thing. If the woman is infertile, she's still not allowed to have sex with somebody she's not allowed to have sex with. Okay. So Reb Meir said a Sris Adam does do chalitza, but a Sris Chama does not. Michti, let's look into this. Shuma'in and Rabbi Akiva da'emer chayave la'avin kechayave krisas damu. Elsewhere, Rabbi Akiva said, where a marriage is a lav marriage, like a Kohen marrying a divorcee, or any other lav marriage, an Esina marrying a Jewish girl, or a mamzer marrying, whatever is a lav marriage, not a Koresh marriage. Rabbi Akiva says it's the same as a Koresh marriage. It's not typhus. It's nothing. And if we learned in the very first Mishnah, if there's a Koresh issue in the family because of relationships, then the woman doesn't have chalitza or yibum. So that seems to be a problem with his ruling in our Mishnah. Omer Rav Ame hacha b'mayaskin, and here is the case. Okay, kegon shenasa achiv geyaris. The dead brother married a convert. Rabbi Akiva Savar Lo, Rabbi Yosei the Aimer, and Rabbi Akiva holds a stringency like Rabbi Yosei, Kahal Gerim Lo Ikre Kahal. Rabbi Yosei has a very restrictive position that you can convert to Judaism, Gesundheit, but no convert, forget Nesinim and Egyptians, no convert can marry a born Jew. So if you have a shiksa girlfriend and she wants to convert, don't ask Rabbi Yossi to be Masada Kedushin. Okay? The ihachi yavame nami miyavim. So if that's the case, so that was an illegitimate marriage, but let her be taken in yibum. Ein hachinami, absolutely. Rabbi Akiva would allow this because this is, we're talking, remember, about a sris. And a sris can't marry a regular girl, but Hitaka can marry a convert. So Mamanavshach, if she was a convert, so then it's perfectly plausible to let the sris marry her. And indeed, Rabbi Akiva would do that. I the Omer of Yeshua Chayleitz, but since the Mishnah had already said that Rabbi Yeshua says a Swiss cannot do Yibam, he can only do Chalitza, Omar Ihu Nami Chayleitz. Rabbi Akiva used the word Chayleitz in his comment to just stick with the topic that the Mishnah was talking about. But he would have indeed, based on this logic, permitted Yibum as well. Daikanami. If you study the Mishnah carefully and you know Dikduk, you can see the same thing in the Mishnah. Dikatane Hey Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira al ben Meguses, that Rabbi Yeshua testified Shahayab Yerushalayim in the din in Bezdin in Yerushalayim about Ben Meguses, Yivomo Esishto, and the surviving brother, did do Yibum, Lakayim Divrei Rabbi Akiva. So that is episaraya that Rabbi Akiva would permit Yibum. Shmami no. So that's true. Okay. Mesif Rava challenges this whole business about Rabbi Akiva. Petsua Daka V'Krus Shifcha Sris Adam, a person who is damaged, his genitalia are damaged, he is labeled as Sris Adam. What about an old man who didn't have Viagra yet? So an old man seems to be, in some cases, is incapable of getting an erection, and he can't. Okay. All cholzin v'ol is miyavim. The sris, the damaged person, the altakaker, can all do either chalitza or yibum. How he's going to do yibum is another question. Ketzad, how does it work? Meso, if one of these people die childless, in other words, you've been married 85 years and you died and you hadn't had children yet, Olahem nashim, olahem achin, if they have surviving wives and surviving male siblings, v'yamdu achin v'yaso maimer b'nishosehen, and one of the or more of the brothers take the initiative and do mimer with the widow, the nusnu get, or they give the widow a rabbinic get. We learned that it's not a real get, but it's a rabbinic get.
What do they need to get? From mimer?
No. Instead of doing chalitza, the guy gave her a get. He wasn't sure what the halacha is. Okay, so it's a valid rabbinically, but it is not. In other words, the rabbi said he did do something. It's similar to chalitza. He's trying to get rid of her, but it's not biblically valid. Or they do chalitza. Ma sheyasu asu. Whatever they do is done. And it counts. It has validity. The imbalu, and if they go and they have bia with her, kanu, they do acquire her. However, masu achin, if one of the brothers who's normal dies, and the surviving brother is someone with crushed testicles or who is impotent or who is incapable of getting an erection, va'amdu hen asu maimer b'nisosehen, and the brother who is incapable does mimer with the girl, with the widow. The nasnu getter gives her a get. Oh, choltzu, or she gives him the boot. Masha asu, it counts. However, in Balu Kanu, if they do have sex with her, it does count to the extent that she's his wife. However, Va'asu Lakaiman, but it's a forbidden union. He's not allowed to sleep with her except at one time, and he has to give her a get. Okay, Mishum Shenemar, Lo Yobo to a Daka, Vakruz Shivcha, Bakal Hashem, that a person with damaged genitalia or missing genitalia cannot marry into the congregation, and the widow is a perfectly good Jew. Alma Kahala Skina. So we see that we're talking about a Yavama who is a legitimate member of the community. So again, we have an issue. Since Rabbi Akiva says that a lav marriage doesn't count at all, how can the Yavama have a Zika with the surviving Yavam if her marriage was illegitimate in the first place and Rabbi Akiva said didn't count? She was just a mistress that the guy was fooling around with from a halachic perspective. So there is no Zika. So we have to revise that. Ella Omer Rava. Rava says the case we're talking about where he was a Sris Adam, not a Sris Chama. Kigon shenafla lo ulbasoif nifza. First he married. The surviving brother is a normal fellow. She fell to Yibum. She has the Zika. Then he's in the car accident and is damaged. And that would not break the Zika. He would have to do do chalitza or whatever. Amalei Abayas. Abayas asks over to Rava. The lay say usher betzua the nidche asher diyavim. So why don't we say that when the guy has the car crash and his genitalia are irreparably damaged, that creates the issur of marrying her. So let's say that severs the Zika. Okay? Even though there was a Zika, now he can't do the deed, so let's sever the Zika. Omilo Tanan, didn't we learn elsewhere in a Mishnah? Rabban Gamliel Omer im miyena mina. If the man is married to an 8-year-old, when she becomes 12, she has the right to reject him. And if she rejects him, then even the rabbinic marriage, limafreya, is dissolved. The imlav, but if she does not reject him on her 12th birthday, tamtin ad shetagadil, so the husband or the yavam, now the guy died, and he has this 12-week-old wife. So, but she's not yet showing simanim. So he can't marry her because a girl who doesn't have simanim can only be married min haTorah by the tati, and he did that once. So what do we do in this case? So let the yavam wait. Tamtim ad shetigadel. Wait until she reaches maturity, shows simanim. The teitze halazu mishum achazisha. So now, but this guy, the problem is that the surviving brother has a woman, his wife, who is the sister of the little girl. Now, two siblings can marry sisters, but one guy can't marry both. So he can't give her do chalitza because she's a minor. He can't marry her because she would be a
An erva.
sister wife, and that's an erva. Okay, so he has to wait and then give her do chalitza. Alma asi iser achos isha v'dachai. So we see here that the fact that she's the wife of, that she's the sister of an existing wife would break the zika. Okay, hachanami nese user suadaka. Okay, vinidchi. So let's say that the fact that the guy's incapable because of circumstance would break the zika. Okay. Ella Omer Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef tries. So Abaya threw out. So Abaya rejects Rava, who tried to explain Rabbi Akiva's ruling. So Ella Omer Rav Yosef. So we're going to try again. Rav Yosef says, "Hi Tana Hach Tana Debe Rabbi Akiva Hida Oimar." The Mishnah is talking about a Yavam who was Epis Sris Shifcha, or one of the other problems prior to his brother's death, and he holds Mechayve Lavin the Shar Have Mamzer, that Chayev Lavim are so much like Krisa's cases that any offspring would be a mamzer. So if a Kohen marries a convert or a widow, or a divorcee, according to this out there opinion, which is not the halacha, the kid is a mamzer. Mechayev lavin the greda lo have a mamzer. But, and this seems to be a contradiction, a woman who is prohibited by just a law, and she has sex with a man, the kid is not a mamzer. So just a minute, that's internally contradictory. Ekre kan lahakim laachiv shem. What is the point of Yibum? The point of Yibum, now we learned this to mean he collects his brother's estate, but you can't go away from simple pshat. And the concept of Yibum is to create a child that would bear the dead guy's name. Okay? Vahai lav bar hachi hu. But the Sris guy is incapable of having children. So his act of Yibum would be utterly gratuitous. So Omer Rava, he says, Imkain, if we're talking about whether or not the guy had been capable or was born incapable, if any of that applies, now this is very cute. Ein lecha isha shekeshera leyavam. There would never be a widow who would be full to Yibum. Why? Shelo nasa baila sris chama asa achas kaidem lemisaso. That when a person is busy dying, he's got more important things on his mind, and he would not be able to get an erection even if there were 100 naked dancing girls in the room. So every single person who dies is for a couple of seconds a srischama, a naturally occurring impotent. And therefore, the woman would be the wife of a sris, and therefore she would not be full to yibum. If you say this argument, L'Rebbe Elazar, Peruka, the Rava, Parka, hey. So do we say that Rava's observation that on their deathbed, just seconds before Misha, everybody is impotent, does that contradict Rabbi Elazar? Hasam kechishusa va'aschila be. there, he's got other work. He's got much more meaningful things on his mind. He's busy dying. That's just a weakness. That's not really an impotence. That's just because he's busy dying. And so just we're gonna ask now. So what is the definition of a sris chama? And the answer is kol shelo roya sha'a achas b'kishay ruso. A sris chama, by definition, is a male who is born incapable of getting an erection. And in his entire life, he's never had an erection. And that's a sris chama.
Yeah.
And we'll pick up tomorrow, Bli Neder, and in Yetzer Hashem.
Actually, you're gonna, I'll be here. You're gonna get cookies. I get cookies.
Okay.
You need money? You're paying me when I get.
Oh, Bobby, you're gonna. So I have to make an announcement that Bobby paid for the cookies.
No,
tomorrow.
he doesn't. Someone else does.
Oh.
I'm just the go-between.
Uh-huh. It's an anonymous donor. Is that the idea?
Yeah, anonymous, not so anonymous.
Uh-huh.
But the milk comes out of the milk.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.